For those of you who have been looking to make plans for the Utah State game, of course, you've been waiting with bated breath for months and months and months, and we've got that information for you. And of course, you will want our breakdown on what that means for USC football as well. And then there was some recruiting that may affect, 2025, 2026. Not a big deal, but we'll get to that as well. Trojan Conquest live right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate all of you standing by. We are flanked, of course, by Tim Prangley and Matt Zemek from Trojan's Wire. Some great stuff over there to check out this week in particular. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great. So again, summer's getting closer. Weather's getting warmer, getting closer towards August. It's like under 90 days now before USC kicks off. So I'm getting excited.
Once we hit June, Matt, then there are a lot of references we can make to, next month. It's only next month is Big Ten Media Days. Next month is this. Next month is that.
Yep, we are getting closer. When that fresh cut summer lawn, has that unique whiff, it means that, the scent of late summer barbecues and tailgates just around the corner, baby. So, yeah, like we're getting there, and the Big Ten era coming ever closer. And I have to just say, hooray for June, because my buddy Tim had a Murphy's Law May, meltdown May, you could say. And that is over. It's in the past. So Tim, I hope, has been refreshed on every possible level, ready to rock and roll in June for this big USC recruiting month. So really happy that Tim is free from that miserable May, because that was just a bear. And just to give you a sense of how the sausage is made at Trojan's Wire, like any other site, you can imagine we have our daily quotas. You have to do things that, keep feeding the SEO machine, the Google beast, and everything. And so with Tim being out of commission, like I was the hamster in the treadmill, on the treadmill in the watchtower, just trying to keep the power on. So just really thankful that May and all of those quotas and monthly job demands, they're over. And now, like, I have Tim back at my side to help me for June. So I'm really happy about that. But you mentioned, the summer weather, it's getting warmer. So that means, early season football. How is that going to work out for USC and every other team? And so, and hey, guys, we're going to get into the recruiting piece of this. We know that's the main story this week at USC football. But, while everyone's just kind of filing into this, town hall that we have here at the Voice of College Football, we start with a little, something a little lighter, fluffier. And so our opening item is Utah State. That's the new game announcement. That's the new kickoff time that's been revealed for the Trojans. And so it's a late one, but it's the first Big Ten Network game. So that's a landmark right there. So you won't have to be living through the Pac-12 Network nightmare for that. So that's good. A lot of USC fans, though, might be grumbling about, oh, God, another 8 p.m. start. Like, we already have the Rutgers Friday night special in late October at 8. Another one? And I understand that. 8 o'clock is not the preferred time. You'll want to be drinking up that Southern California sunshine, or at least, have that late afternoon, early evening, 4:30, 5 o'clock sweet spot. But just for week 2, not talking about any other week of the season, just week 2, just September 7, that week, it's great that USC gets an 8 p.m. kickoff. Why? Because let's remember, LSU game is a Sunday, September 1st, Labor Day weekend. And Mark, I know you know this as a guy who studies college football, knows the sport inside out. You remember it. I remember it. Virginia Tech losing a week 2 game to I think it was James Madison, supposed to be the ultimate cupcake, easy peasy, but Virginia Tech played a Monday night Labor Day game. The Hokies were roasted and toasted. They didn't have enough turnaround time. They were spent. So when you play a Sunday or a Monday game on Labor Day weekend, and you do schedule a week 2 game, which, if you can, you should avoid it. That should be an off week. But if you do have to play on a short week at the beginning of the season, when the weather is generally hot around the country, 8:00 p.m. is exactly when you want that follow-up game after playing on a Sunday night in week 1 after LSU. Because like that LSU game, win or lose, it's going to take a lot out of the Trojans. You want that late game. Like if this was a 12:30 kick, woo, that I would be just a little pinch nervous about everything, but 8:00, this is exactly the right week to have it. So for any USC fans who are understandably upset about, we already have 2 8 p.m. games on our schedule at the Coliseum this season. All right, you can complain about the Rutgers one, fine by me, but Utah State, it's a godsend. It's exactly what USC needs for that week 2 slot, given that USC is playing on a short week.
Well, it's going to be your first game as our welcome to the Big Ten Network. So like you said, at least it's not the Pac-12 network. Let's face it, it's Rutgers and it's Utah State. We didn't expect to be on Big Noon with those kind of matchups. And so they're going to pick which ones are big games. I can promise you when SC plays schools like Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nebraska, etc., that we're going to get slotted in those better times. So you guys, it's just part of the product. If we're going to be playing the Utah States, and the Rutgers games, those games are going to be buried probably on the Big Ten Network, and they want that night slot, right? They didn't pay all those millions of dollars in order to have that money go to waste, and now they have that West Coast game, and they are going to use it. And I'd much rather be slotted, for the games against Utah State and Rutgers at that slot, and then have our big games on, during the prime hours.
Yes, the Big Ten Network, prior to, of course, acquiring the 4 teams from the West Coast, was relegated to 3 time slots during a Saturday. And now they can extend it to that 4th time slot to the West Coast and feature those under the radar, less significant games, but still money makers for the network, still significant to their coffers. And so, yes, they want to take advantage of any time there's going to be a West Coast team involved that they can corner at home that's not playing a marquee game and be able to take advantage. And this is exactly one of those, as is the Rutgers game.
Yeah. So, hey, one of the things we're doing at Trojans Wire, it's Big Ten summer. We're going to be educating about the Big Ten and introducing everybody to the new conference that USC is about to join. So here's a little piece of that puzzle, and Mark just alluded to it. So that's perfect material for me to just kind of offer a segue here. The USC Utah State game on September 7th, it's part of a quadruple header on Big Ten Network. Not sure what the early game is, but Michigan State, Maryland is the 3:30 game. Ohio State has a cupcake game at 7:30 Eastern, and then USC at 8. So yeah, Big Ten Network can stack 4 games on a lot of Saturdays now, and that either Oregon or Washington, UCLA or USC, one of those 4 is going to be in a regular rotation. Like Big Ten Network now gets to show games at 10:30, 11:30 Eastern time. That is 3.5 hours of new real estate where they're not just repeating the Big Ten football postgame show. They now have more game action, and that's more time. That's more time off for their on-air personalities. They don't have to do the Big Ten postgame show until the middle of the night. So I'm they just get to watch more football. I'm sure that Dave Revson and Jerry DiNardo and all the people there at BTN, I'm sure they're loving this. So being able to have a quadruple header, and this of course is going to extend into basketball as well. Big BTN, you're home for late night college basketball. It's Bill Walton's not going to be around to see it, but there's going to be an 11 p.m. a midnight Eastern basketball game on BTN now regularly. We're getting a sense of what the media landscape is. The big BTN now gets all this extra game inventory, football, hoops, everything else multiplied. This is just so much more live event programming, and that's part of the value that the Big Ten is getting with these 4 new West Coast schools.
And for us at the Voice of College Football, of course, we will do USC postgame in some manner, and we will make those announcements later in the summer. But for me personally, that does a call-in show after the Eastern time zone primetime games, so roughly 11:30 at night. The football fan in me wants to delay that to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and wants to watch the late games. I don't like when I've got to just out of the corner of my eye watch USC, Arizona State, and the like that they played last year, a lot of those late games, because I want to watch those games. But for the health of the network, it's best that I get on here by 11:30 Eastern time. And I've got to just kind of catch up on the USCs and UCLAs of the world and everything that's going on in the West Coast. But I love late night. I look at the schedule each week, and I love even when it can go beyond that, and you can catch like a Hawaii game that kicks off at more like 11:30 and extends it to like 3 in the morning. Oh, it's just more football, Absolutely.
And
love it.
I mean, one of the great pleasures that we no longer have is having a Hawaii game on the first Saturday of December, late at night. Like that used to be like one of my ultimate comfort food moments. We've all argued about the bowl championship series or the college football playoff, but you know what? We have a Hawaii game in beautiful sunshine to round out that first Saturday of December. I would get misty eyed, because that was like the last pure regular season game of the year, and they've discontinued that. I wish they'd bring it back, because like that was one of the ultimate palate cleansers for any college football fan over the season.
And before Tim reels us back in and pounds his fist and gets us back to USC, which we will do in about 20 seconds, I will add to that, Matt, as a guy that loves college football and all the conferences, but beyond, even after that final Thanksgiving weekend, which it typically was in the Big Ten, there was the likes of Michigan State, Wisconsin, Michigan. All three of those come to mind in the 80s and 90s that ventured out to Hawaii to play a game after the rivalry game, a regular season game. Exactly. It was just phenomenal. Loved it.
It was a non-bowl bowl. It was a non-bowl bowl. That's basically what it was. All right. Before we do get back to USC, just because we're talking schedules and because we're also talking about the death of the Pac-12, just a brief note on the other Pac-12 schools that are heading out of the conference. I'm not sure if you noticed this, Mark, but in the Big 12 schedule release, Arizona is playing Kansas State early in the season. So Arizona is going to be in the Big 12. And Arizona's going to be playing Kansas State, but it's a non-conference game. And as well as I do, Mark, North Carolina and Wake Forest in the past decade, they have twice played a non-conference game. It did not count in the ACC standings. It's because the ACC schedule rotation didn't regularly have them playing each other. So they just decided to play a non-conference game that does not count in the league standings. So Arizona, Kansas State is a non-conference game this season. Also, Utah and Baylor, back end of a home and home, that's not a Big 12 conference game. It's also a non-conference game. And the final plot twist involving a Pac-12 school that's moving out, Utah at Arizona State is a Friday night game, October 11. It's going to be Pac-12 after dark, except we're all going to watch that game and notice a Big 12 logo on the field. It's going to be so weird to have Big 12 after dark, or as I also call it, Pac-12 after death this season. It's gonna take some getting used to. All right, so that's the scheduling stuff with various Pac-12 teams. That's kind of our opening act, but I think now we can segue into the featured part of our show, USC football recruiting.
Well, before we get to that, of course, Tim has brought up the super chat, courtesy Adam, our buddy Adam. We appreciate you being here, Adam. And another brilliant call from Adam that I caught last Friday night with Tim states here, Matt, I saw an interview with Jen Cohen in which she praised our entry into the Big Ten, saying that we will be dominant and that is good for the students. She doesn't get it, yet you have not called her out. Why?
Why, Matt? Why haven't you?
Well, Adam, first of all, thank you for the super chat, and we love your generosity to the show and your faithful support. So, I will answer your questions until all the planets and the stars burn out billions of years from now. So, thank you. In terms of Jen Cohen, Adam, It's really very simple. She's not running this show. Carol Folt is running the show. Jen Cohen and Jen Cohen did not engineer the move to the Big Ten. Mike Bone had a hand in it, but it's ultimately Carol Folt's call. Like that's a presidential decision. It's not, the athletic director doesn't determine whether a school moves to the Big Ten or not. Now they can have influence, like as I'm sure the ADs at Oklahoma and Texas urge the move to the SEC, but it's ultimately not their call. It's at the presidential level. So Adam, if you really want to have a complaint about moving to the Big Ten, blame Carol Folt. But my position on this, there are a couple things. One is that the Pac-12 treated USC like dirt. Let's remind ourselves of that USC wanted and frankly deserved, as the cash cow of the conference, an uneven revenue share. Pac-12 CEO group wouldn't give it. Pac-12 CEO group flipped the bird to USC. So is USC just going to stand there and take it? No. And then the other thing is money. Adam, you like money, and we like your money, the money that you donate here to the Voice of College Football with these very generous and lavish super chats. So as someone who likes money, there's a lot of it here for USC. And so, hey, Pac-12 is treating USC like dirt, won't give USC an uneven extra revenue share. The Big Ten is going to give tens of millions of extra dollars per year. This just a boatload of money, like what the security guard, throws himself on Breaking Bad, that big security dude just lying there like a bloated beached whale on that huge pallet of money. Hey, here's a pallet of money, a massive pallet of money. Are you going to turn that down? I know this destruction of tradition sucks. You know it. We all agree with it. It's sad. But really, what was USC supposed to do, right? Here's a big pallet of money. Let's leave behind a conference that's treating us like dirt. That's not really a hard choice. So there's just not too much else to be said about that.
So much. I know it wasn't addressed towards me, but Adam, I just can't listen to any more of this. This is the greatest thing to happen to USC. You make it seem like it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. This is where college football went. It's a tragedy that we no longer have regionality in college football. Okay, all that's bad. But getting the money, I mean, would USC be in the situation it's in now if I don't know, back in 2010 they joined the Big Ten and started getting all that Big Ten money instead of basically giving all of our money away to support the Pac-12 that literally thanked us by giving us Friday night games and quick turnarounds and horrible officiating. I can go down a list. Did any of the Pac-12 teams come to USC side when the NCAA came after us like they do in every other conference? Hell no, they didn't. They sat back going, all right, finally we can catch up to USC. These are the things that I think about when I hear about the Big Ten and USC leaving. Am I sad that Pac-12 is gone? Absolutely. I mean, it's what I grew up with, right? Am I sad that we're not dealing with all that bullshit we dealt with in the Pac-12? Not for 1 second. And what do you do when you're sitting there and your ship is sinking? Do you go down with the ship or do you hop on the Carnival cruises? As I said before, you've got the Big Ten going by. You go with your free drink card and they hand you a free drink card. They're gonna get the half off Huskies and the discount Ducks. They're gonna give them maybe like steerage on the bottom, but bring them along with UCLA. But they're begging us to come. Are we gonna say no to that and go down with the ship? What happened to that conference when USC left? Did they treat us like that when we were there? That's all I have to say on that whole subject. If SC had stayed in the Pac-12 1, it couldn't have saved the Pac-12, and USC would have dissolved with it. That's all. That's what there is for me on that.
I would just add one other thing. We get Juju Watkins on Big Ten Network. I will be able to actually watch Juju Watkins and our Final Four contending USC women's basketball team every night on BTN. Like that is not to be pushed to the side in all of this.
Great points, guys. I have nothing to add to that. Let's move on to recruiting because we are at that point where Guys are going to camp and trying to impress coaches and scouts. And of course, the offers will be going out, and the official visits are in full bloom. And we should expect in the 4 to 8 weeks following this stretch for those commitments to start to come. But we're just at the outset of that. So, Tim, what caught your eye in regards to USC's efforts?
No, 38 4-stars, 6 5-stars over the next 3 weekends. That should be happy for anyone to hear. What Riley is selling is development. You're hearing it in a lot of these kids' comments. If anyone's seen, if you're on Twitter or Instagram and you're seeing the quality, I mean, it's almost comical. I'm not going to crap on any schools, Georgia, and their videos compared to USC's. It's literally go on and take a look at what they're doing. And you might say, oh, that's stupid, it's fluff, it's whatever. It's what these kids love. And in an age of NIL, when you show the production quality, what USC does and how they do it, and the professionalism, the detail in which they promote these kids, it's just touching the surface to these kids of what we're going to be able to do with you in LA when you come to our school. And it is full Hollywood, you guys. Even if you don't have Twitter, just make an account and go check out some of the stuff that these kids are doing, because it truly looks Hollywood. It looks like, was it Industrial Light Magic? I'm probably dating myself on that, but it's just amazing the effects that they do and everything. But the reality of it is they brought in 9 4-stars and 2 5-stars recently on this latest visit, which was a good haul. I mean, you look at a lot of times, remember the stuff, whenever you heard from one of the kids coming from these visits, you know, we'd always hear, love the sunshine. It's a great school, right? The words coming out of these kids' mouths all the time were those kind of platitudes, you know, nothing about never anything about the coaching staff. But now it is. Now you're hearing, you know, I see how I fit in the system. I know this is a place where they can develop me for the NFL. You know, I got to hang out with Ronnie Lott, you know, and Taylor Mays. I mean, you hear all these name drops and the situation they have there. And it's hard to argue. You know, it's hard to argue the difference from what we used to see to what we're seeing now. And it doesn't slow down. I mean, next week they have, next week's a big weekend where you could have 17 4-stars and 2 5-stars coming in. One of those 5-stars is going to be Julian Lewis, and we'll talk about him, Juju Lewis. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But Matt, I mean, I'm not chasing the stars. We're talking about the top players from not just Southern California, but all over the country.
You know, one of the other things to mention, like you mentioned, the graphics and the presentation in terms of media content. That's an important piece. The other part is, you know, Annie Hansen, the director of the operations. You know, she puts on a first class, you know, LA style beachfront type party, you know, for these recruits. You know, she was tweeting the pictures, the visuals about just this great lavish, you know, setup. You know, treating the recruits like royalty. So you have that as well. But it's important, and Tim, you kind of alluded to it. I think it's just worth reiterating and kind of developing. You have, you know, the style, the Hollywood, and, you know, the first class treatment, you know, professionals in terms of creating an event, an experience, a weekend, a moment that's attractive to recruits. But those are the aesthetics. You now have some steak to go along with the sizzle. And that's that developmental piece. That's having a really serious credentialed defensive coaching staff. And so, you know, like, it's not as though Annie Hansen and the rest of the operations department did an inferior job the past few summers. What was not there was a defensive coordinator who, you know, knew his stuff inside and out. We have a secondary coach who knows his stuff inside and out. We have just a deep, complete defensive coaching staff. And so for defensive recruits at all of the different positions, you know, they were walking into a room on these USC June recruiting weekends the past 2 years with Alex Grinch and Dante Williams, you know, lightweights in terms of actual coaching acumen, not, you know, recruiting ability. You know, Dante Williams had some skill there, but it was not supplemented with elite teaching chops, credentials, and now USC has that. And so, you know, the 2024 transfer portal, like, guys who have been playing college football, like they saw the past few years that USC just wasn't serious enough about toughness, physicality, and specifically defense. And so, like, you can understand that people who have actually played college football, even with the new USC defensive staff hires, they might still be just a little bit hesitant, a little bit reluctant to join this program for their what could be their senior season, their final go around. Like it just might not be the ideal setup. Like they might see that USC is beginning to make the right choices and engineer a proper transition, but to spend that one final year going in the portal from somewhere else to USC just might not feel right for them. But in marked contrast, for freshmen, incoming freshmen, high school recruits who want to start their career at USC and ideally finish it there, having these defensive coaches, having these grown-up adults who know how to teach, who know how to communicate, who know how to create a standard and an expectation of toughness, who won't put up with, amateurish behavior. Now that you have grown-ups on this staff for future recruiting classes, it makes sense that USC is finally going to not only make some gains, but cement them and sustain them. So that's the really exciting part of this June month and what USC is building for 2025, 2026, and beyond.
And so I guess I started these from earlier because they need to be hit just before we went on the air. Okay, so we're talking about the recruits, talking about the defense, talking about development, talking about everything. USC got off to a hell of a quick start, and one of the big starts was pulling Isaiah Gibson from Georgia. And right before we came on, was it Steve? I think it's Steve Whitfong. He has the Fong bomb. That's the comment right there. One of the top guys in the industry as far as recruiting services are concerned. Is basically saying that he's now flipping back to Georgia. He's from Georgia. And that would be a hit. Again, Justice Terry is still here, and there's plenty of other guys. Really, what we have a lot. If you look at our edge rushers, and Isaiah Gibson, I think is the number one edge rusher in the country. So I'm not trying to say that he's not important. He'd be like a defensive end in Lynn's system. But what I am saying is you're not going to keep everybody, and you're not going to lose everyone, because then Walter Clark quickly came back with the fact that he had said this, Walter, before. We don't know what's going on now. He may or may not, but they are talking about, he was always talking about coming back out as well. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. You guys, this is recruiting. This is not for the faint of heart. Anybody who's been following recruiting for years, I will say I think it's calmed down actually a little bit with all the money involved and the way they do the early recruiting cycle. I don't think it's as crazy and up and down as has been over the years, but it is recruiting. And what a kid is telling us now, what he told us back, in March or April or May is not going to be what he's talking about in December. What he's saying in June and July might not be what he's saying in December. All that matters is where he signs in December. And quite frankly, from what we've learned, even then it's not safe. If he signs, he has spring practice, he might go back to some other school. So this stuff is so fluid at this point that really the old recruiting cycle and the letter of intent. I mean, what is a letter of intent anymore, you guys? What is the purpose of a letter of intent? Remember, we used to treat these things like it was gospel truth coming from God over the fax machine. Now that thing has absolutely zero validity that I'm aware of. You guys can help me out. It just seems like you can say, hey, I'm coming to your school. Oh, spring ball didn't work out. I'm heading out, guys. I mean, really, there's not a lot to recruiting anymore.
Everything that you just said, Tim, is right on the mark. However, I would like to see somebody put metrics to that. So we've been in this recruiting / transfer portal era for about 3 years now. And I would like to see somebody put metrics to how many flips are we talking about? And I don't want the job of doing that. But I got to think somebody somewhere is tracking these commitment announcements, and then also just the transfer portal and the likelihood that somebody's going to transfer, and especially at a certain tier level of recruit. It would just be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, recruiting is one thing, and what people forget about also is is there's three things you're recruiting. You're recruiting the high school kids, you're recruiting the transfer portal, and you're recruiting your own roster. And so we're going to see when do we start seeing the first general managers that, or whoever who's in charge of roster management, probably not going to be the head coach anymore. It's probably going to be some guy who's working with the coach, the coaching staff, and the NIL. I mean, I don't know how it's all going to work.
They are out there already. So as Tim posted here, if you haven't already done so, please hit the like button and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Summer coming. The content will be heating up. Matt, Tim, and I got together this week. We have planned out the summer. We're working on diligently setting you up for the season with previews and personnel breakdowns, a look at the conference that is new to USC. All of it, we're going to be all over, bringing in media guests from opponents for 2024. So we will announce things a little bit more officially and give you more of a program guide and schedule going forward. But believe me, we are going full throttle this summer.
Yeah, Big Ten media, right? Mark doesn't know, but he's taking me already. He didn't know that already, but I'll be going with him. No, Frank's trying to get my own.
If I can get a cheap ticket, I'll be there. I'll do a report from there for us. Absolutely, I will.
All right, and then we'll do. When it comes to fall camp, I mean, it's going to heat up, you guys. So make sure if you haven't already subscribed, definitely make sure you hit that and hit the like button. I really appreciate you all being here, and that really helps us out.
Adam followed up his previous super chat, making a number of comments in the chat, and he is determined with this. And every time Adam calls me, it is an excellent football conversation from a perspective that is rarely, delved into. I will say that. But he certainly still wants USC out of the Big Ten. He wanted to go independent. This is back on field. Adam is stating here, and we thank you so much for the super chat. Given our defensive personnel and size on the defensive line, do you guys think a 4-2-5 with a cover 3 zone is preferable, along with vision, break coverage, or a 3-4 base defense? What do you think the Anton Lynn will do?
I think, Adam, the main thing here is that this coaching staff knows what it's doing. I mean, I'm like, we haven't seen USC play with this coaching staff, but like, I'm already convinced. Everything that I'm seeing, everything that I've read, everything that I've heard, like, these guys seem to know what they're doing. So to me, Adam, the defense they should use is the defense that this staff thinks is appropriate. Like, that's the answer. I'm not going to impose, Danton Lynn and Eric Henderson should use a 4-2-5. No, it's what they think. Whatever they say, like, I'm willing to give them that berth. That's the thing. And let's remember, with Alex Grinch, like, you couldn't just focus on one thing, right? Scheme was complicated, but like, the evaluations of the players weren't right. Who was starting wasn't right. The roster management and the rotation weren't right. Nothing was right. As long as you can get alignment in terms of all those different pieces, the right players are starting, the right roster decisions and evaluations are made, arranging the depth chart appropriately, and putting players in positions to make plays. You just get that alignment, and things are going to work out. So I trust the defensive staff. I am not going to tell them what to do or how to do it. I'm just going to say, hey, you guys go to work. Like, this is why Lincoln Riley hired you. This is why Jen Cohen paid the money to beef up the salary pool, for these assistants. That you just now take that football knowledge you have and put it to work. That's really the main message from me.
Before Tim cuts loose on this, because of course he knows the personnel, I'm going to give a very basic statement on this, because the personnel, though, I will be digging in here. These are my summer months now to dive into rosters and really get familiar with these teams. But I will say this: any football coach that is worth his salt has a philosophy, has preferences that he believes this is the way this scheme, this is the way this side of the ball should best be effective. However, he takes that approach and then he applies it to the personnel and says, yes, while this is my baby, this is my scheme, we can't do this yet. We may be able to do this in a recruiting cycle or 2 or 3. So I need to make adjustments because we can't run the way I like to run yet. So there are some adjustments there. And then there might be some slight tweaks, but I think this is third on the list and much less of a consideration to look at the league, to look at the style of play in the Big Ten, to look at what's required there versus the opponents versus what you faced in the Pac-12. But I think that is a distant third to the first two.
Well, so I'm not going to go into, because I'm familiar with the scheme. I will just tell you this, Adam. Run whatever we brought Lynn in to run. It works in the NFL. It did great at UCLA. It's going to be fine at USC. And to Mark's point, he was very clear. He made the point. I'm going to make the defense, to fit the personnel we have. He was very clear to say that. He's not going to stick to his particular type of defense. He says, what I do is I use the personnel I have and I put the best defense out there. So I know that he likes versatility. I know that he really is going to find a way to be specific. He's going to find a way to where you could have, our linebackers. I think our linebackers are going to play a huge role in this defense. And big part of this is how they can use Eric Gentry. I heard him bring up his name a couple of times, and Matt Entz. You don't have guys like, we have a Caleb Williams on your offense. You could do certain things you can't do in other offenses. When you have an Eric Gentry in your defense, you can do certain things you can't do in other defenses. I'm not worried about the team that goes out there. I'm worried about depth. The only issue on the defense side of the ball that you'll see me worry about going through this year is we keep those, because we have great linebackers, but they have a hard time staying healthy. And so if they can stay healthy, and we know we're thin on the defensive line, right? On the defensive interior especially. If those guys can stay healthy, we shouldn't have problems, Adam, that we had. And I don't know, what do we always hear for years, going all the way back to Oklahoma about Lincoln Riley? Oh, if he could only just get a good or a decent defense, we'll have a good or a decent defense. Will we be a top 10 defense? Probably not. Are we going to be a 2008 and keep our opponents under 10 points? Probably not. Okay. 75 yards rushing? Probably not. But what we will have is that good defense matched up with the Lincoln Riley offense. That's all people have wanted to see for a while. And now we have big boys, in the coaching staff that are proven at their positions, that are great at what they've done, and they've come together, and we're hoping they have the depth of pieces in place to do it. We know we have the talent. The frontline talent, the 11 guys they're going to put out there could probably play with almost anybody. Can they develop the backups? Can they get the young freshmen involved, which is going to be very, very important, especially depth along defensive line? Can they do that? Those are your questions, Adam. As far as defense, we don't need them. We always, our joke on the show is always, we don't need the 85 Bears. We just need somebody out there that's not going to be, 18th in the, or 17th in the Big Ten, right? We're not going to be 103rd in the country. You know what I mean? We're going to be hopefully a top 40 defense in that range. And with that and what we have on offense, we should be just fine.
And there's something to add here. And our friend Gary from Dana Point is in the chat. I noticed him. And, Gary and I had a few conversations on our Friday call-in show here at the Voice of College Football with Tim. And Gary is on record, and I think it's a perfectly reasonable viewpoint, as are all of Gary's viewpoints. Gary made the perfectly thoughtful, logical argument that USC should continue to try to pitch it around the ballpark on offense, continue to try to score. Why stop being aspirational just because Caleb Williams is gone? Like, there's still Miller Moss, there's still a lot of great wide receivers. If the offensive line comes together, hey, why not try to continue scoring 40 points a game at USC? Now, I've taken the argument, the viewpoint that, USC's offense is probably going to be more ball control oriented this year to minimize the defense's exposure. But regardless of where you land on that argument, Gary from Dana Point making a perfectly logical, well-informed argument, or me, being the contrarian as always, regardless of which side you fall on that argument, the important point is, it's going to be relevant. It's going to be germane to this larger situation with USC's defense. What does the offense allow the defense to do? Is the offense going to put the defense in a position to succeed, or is the offense going to really reduce this defense's margins? And that tension point is there. It exists on a general level, but then in the first few weeks of the season, you have a couple very different elite opponents on the schedule. You have LSU, a team that is ostensibly built to score and has a ton of defensive questions after an atrocious defensive performance last year. And then a couple weeks after that, you have Michigan, which is very much the opposite of LSU. That bone-crushing defense, leaned on the defense, for the season, going to ram the ball between the tackles, not a finesse team at all. But LSU with Jaden Daniels was very much a finesse team last year. So, there are going to be some different styles, different kinds of games. And that underscores the point that, what the needs for the USC defense are against LSU going to be very different from the needs for USC's defense against Michigan, and how the offense enters the picture in terms of facilitating the style of football and ideally the complementary football that USC wants to play in each of those games. Like, these are all parts of a Rubik's Cube, and the alignment of that Rubik's Cube is going to look very different in the LSU game compared to the Michigan game, compared to other games later on in this 2024 schedule. So that's an important part to mention in terms of the larger conversation about this USC defense.
And remember that to Matt's point about, ball control, running the ball a lot more. I do think that's they have been. Henson has been stacking up with bigger dudes on the line. Look no further than Hayden Treater, who's going to come in, and I think somewhere along his freshman year, I just think he's going to get a look. And at 6'7", 330 or 325, whatever he's already at before he even gets on to campus. He got on campus today. I talked to him the other day. He's reporting today on campus. That's going to be something special to watch. Going along with, Elijah Page, huge, big guy, big sophomore. He's going to be amazing. Tobias Raymond's not there at right tackle. You still have Mason Murphy there, but he'll be pushing him. These are all gigantic guys. When we think about USC linemen, now we're really starting to look at those 6'6", 6'7", 320, 330 guys that we're used to seeing out there. We're not going to, I think we're going to see a different brand of offensive line going forward. And then I'm excited to see. I mean, that group is amazing. And I think it's going to be one of our stronger points. Again, 2 years ago when we won 11 games, it was the strength of our team. This year, it's going to be possible with our wide receiver and our running backs. It's going to be one of the strengths of our team. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how well, Matt, they can play that game. We also remember the offenses we are playing, I keep banging this drum, are not going to be the fast score offenses we had in the past. They're going to slow the game down for us as well. The question is going to be, though, can this defense get off the field? Because they are, again, thin on the defensive line. So it's going to be, are they allowing these protracted body blows down the field? So in the fourth quarter, they're gassed. We saw that a couple of times last year where it just seems like the USC just ran out of steam. Will USC be able to get these defenses or these offenses off the field? And again, I'm very, very confident. It's a great point by Donnell Smith. It's not like UCLA wasn't a tough physical team. They were great against the run last year. We are lacking that gigantic nose tackle that they have and still retained. But I just think you guys are going to see a different type of defense. What we saw the last 2 years with guys running around with their hair on fire and but it seemed like they're lost. I think those days are gone, and I do think that the ability for teams to pick up 3rd and 17, those days are going to be over because no one's going to be wide open.
I do believe that there's a difference between these conferences. However, I believe it's overblown. There are plenty of Pac-12 players that move on to the NFL and play a physical style of football for pay on Sunday and on that defensive side of the football. But I do believe that They're moving into a tougher, more physical league. There's no question about that. But I think some people overplay it, and mostly our friends from some Big Ten schools that we talk to on a daily basis overplay that a bit. Eric Gentry was nicked up a little bit last year, still played in 12 games, but I know that he's not known as a physical player, but he's a very unique player that really jumped off the screen the year before. And I'm interested to see how he's going to look this year, because again, he's a unique player that could cause a lot of havoc. We do appreciate, I got to tell Tim this, I appreciate anytime when you're talking all-time teams and we're talking, let's say, who would win BCS era games, and Tim will stop by, do a drive-by, and put some people straight on this one, because USC nationally, those Pete Carroll teams are known as high-flying offense, This is why they won. Reggie Bush breaking tackles in the open field, Matt Leinart throwing it to those fleet wide receivers downfield. People forget, or they just didn't know or recognize the defenses. Oh my word, on those teams were remarkable, among some of the best that we've seen in college football in the last 40 or 50 years.
That's some of the best defensive units SC's ever had, which is saying a lot. USC through the years are known for our defense. Yes, the running backs and the offensive linemen get all the headlines, and then lately it's been the quarterbacks. But when you just think about the Ronnie Lott, Chip Banks, just all the guys going all the way back, the older guys going back, you look at the Wild Bunch 2 under the Pete Carroll years, that defensive line they had. Look at the linebackers they had in 2008 with Cushing, Maualuga, Maiava, Matthews. Just brutal defenses USC had, and that was the reason why USC was going to win with their offense. They were dominant because of their defenses. That's how you got that game, that Orange Bowl game against Oregon. I mean, against Oklahoma, where it was just, the game was over. That game was over began. Why? Because that defense says, Adrian Peter, we're going to smash you guys. You guys aren't going to get moving. You guys aren't going to get started. And they literally did that to a very good. I mean, there are a number of guys from that Oklahoma offense that went on to the NFL, but that defense just shut them down.
Absolutely, absolutely. We appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. We also had a third super chat coming in from Adam, and also wanted to, of course, catch up with this one. Adam, thank you so much. Basically stating here, Mark, Tim, Matt, you guys put on a great show every week, and your analysis is excellent. I just wanted to say thank you for that. Adam, thank you for that, and so much more that you do. Your contributions here that we see on the screen, but also with your phone calls and with your conversation that you ignite in the chat is much appreciated, sir.
And I know we appreciate you, Adam, calling, commenting, and donating money. But also, those of you guys, maybe you guys don't have, the money's not right for right now, but you could always help us out. Again, just hitting that like button. We appreciate you being here. And that like button is really much appreciated as well.
All right. One thing we want to hit on before we close down the show, and that is that, and this is it's kind of a recruiting piece, but it's also a future of USC football piece. Taylor Mays was part of the recruiting hospitality. He was like part of the Trojan legends, Trojan royalty, talking to recruits. But like, he's still on the staff as a consultant, as an analyst. But yet he was very much integrated into the recruiting weekend. So, I mean, not to try and draw too big a conclusion, but just like the fact that a member of the staff was also part of the front-facing public recruiting events, it's certainly a good thing. Right? It's certainly not a negative or neutral thing. I mean, so that tells me that there is at least a chance that Taylor Mays might be invested in USC for the long haul. Now, I'm not predicting that, but just the fact that he was a major part of this recruiting weekend, that tells me that like he really wants to be part of ushering this program back to the mountaintop, that he wants to be very much part of this effort. And so, like Belk, Entz, Lynn, Henny, obviously, if they do their jobs really, really well, they're going to be really hot commodities in coaching carousels at various levels in future years. I'm not trying to depress anybody, but they're not going to be here forever. Maybe 4 years, 5 years, whatever. Taylor Mays being part of this recruiting weekend, this is the central point I wish to make, and it's a happy one. And that is that, if he really wants to stay with this staff and not go to a group of 5 school as a defensive coordinator, or to another Power 5 school as a secondary or defensive backs coach, if he's willing to just stay at USC for the next several years and provide continuity to this defensive coaching staff, and then be in position to move up the ladder within the USC staff when someone else grabs a head coaching job or maybe an NFL coordinator job, whatever, that is a huge, huge potential positive for USC. And I wanted to make sure to note that on tonight's show.
And a big reason why I think that this secondary we're going to enjoy watching them. As you said about Belk, we know Lynn is a secondary guy. And Taylor Mays had his fingerprints all over that Holiday Bowl. That was just an amazing job by the secondary, just almost a night and day turnaround in that secondary. So be ready for it, you guys. I've said it a couple of times now. If we get a decent pass rush, you guys are going to be really delighted to see that with the players we have in our secondary. It's going to be this is the most dominant cornerback group that I've seen in a while. And then I don't even get started on safety. So you guys get ready. I know I'm going to hype it up too much, but I don't think I can. I mean, I'm willing to put my name out there on this. Our secondary is going to be something special this year.
And when we get to the secondary, folks, we will see where Tim, Matt, and myself rank the USC secondary against the rest of the Big Ten, because we are going to go through Big Ten rankings, position rankings, and where USC places amongst the best in the Big Ten at every position throughout the summer. That is just one of the content features that we will have available for all of you throughout the summer. So don't miss. We know that you're going to have fun this summer. We want you to have fun. And if you've got to miss the live show, of course, make sure that you watch us at some point during the week. But we would especially want you to be here and take that hour, find that hour to join us live, because then you can interact with us. And of course, again, we're going to go through Big Ten position rankings, and then we're going to go through every opponent on the USC schedule and bring in a media guest for those conversations and give you a look into Big Ten history as it pertains to USC and USC's history with many of the schools that they will be getting more familiar with this fall, and so much more content as we really get into the nuts and bolts, also with the personnel, of course, for USC and their opponents.
Another great supporter. Thank you so much, Slap Happy, for being here. Appreciate you're late, though. I'll let the other guys over at the Light Torch podcast know that you were late, but appreciate you being here, of course. And then Donnell Smith, another great comment. BMW is back as well, so that's another great. Mike Williams is back at SC, and it's good to see 2 guys that know how to win. You got 2 guys that have been there, know how to win. And we talk about Matt Entz, his national championships. That's a guy that knows how to win. Lynn knows how to win. We already know Riley knows how to win. There's staff here in place now that they're building a winning culture. They're building, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You guys, I think the worst thing the world could have done was stick Lincoln Riley's nose. I mean, one too many people said to him, "Yeah, but Lincoln Riley doesn't care about defense. He doesn't, he can't. Lincoln Riley will never have a good defense." I think is getting better and is going to get better. You saw it in his face; he was pissed off, and he made it very clear that he's going to fix the defense, and everything going forward, it's about having an elite defense. And if you look at what they've done in the offseason, I don't know, Mark. I mean, and Matt, I'm telling you. Do you guys know what I'm talking about, right? They always say, "Oh, if Lincoln Riley only had a decent defense," I think he's going to have a decent defense. Does he have the depth this year? Maybe not, but he's going to have that decent defense if he can keep a majority of the staff together.
And if this month of June hits the home runs that USC hopes it will.
Yeah, and you know what? Speaking of which, this is a kind of Ohio. This goes back to a little bit of Ohio State. With Richard McNutt, but his son, who's one of the 5-stars safety, he's a legacy to Ohio State, but Ohio State's got their fair share of 5-star safeties and guys. So, part of it also is playing time and opportunities. He was one of the guys who was out here visiting, but the guy that really there's higher ranked guys that got a lot of attention, but the one, Matt, I was talking to you about offline is Aaron Dunn from Utah, big 6'7" offensive lineman, roughly about a top 100 guy. These are the pieces, again, that catch my eye. You give me defensive linemen from Georgia, and then you go ahead and then you turn that around. You start building in those 6'7" guys that, USC has gotten, but, it's either A, there's been injury that shortened their careers, or they just haven't developed. I know, Matt, you've had your questions about Henson, but lands a couple of these guys, I think we're going to be on our way to fixing that offensive line. So it's a long way from December, but he had some very glowing comments coming out of his official. So we'll see how that goes.
Hey, I want Josh Henson to succeed, but the jury's still out. Pretty simple.
Appreciate y'all being here at Trojan Conquest, right here at the Voice of College Football. It's each and every Monday at 7 Pacific time. Join Matt and Tim for the big call-in show coming up Friday, and we are still at 6 Pacific
for
the call-in show on Friday.
Yeah, Tim, do you want to announce the change? Or,
yeah. So wait, so we moved it. We moved it to 7, correct, Matt? Yeah, we talked about it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we talked about 2 weeks ago with in the chat, and the chat was overwhelmingly agreeing at 7. Summertime, we got a lot more sun. Yeah, let's make it 7 o'clock. I'll put it on the socials. By the way, if you guys aren't following us on our socials, Matt and I and Mark. Well, I know Matt and I want to do some. I didn't get a lot of good feedback on it, but I want to see if you guys want to do some rewatches. Just getting ready, going up to the season. So let us know. And the best way to get a hold of us, if you have questions, to go ahead and send us a message. I believe all of our messages are open on our socials, so go ahead and leave us a message.
And with all
this week, folks, you want to message Tim, because I'm following the French Open. I'm kind of out of the loop with Trojan's Wire, the Twitter feed. Coco Gauff plays in 6 hours, so message Tim this next week.
You are talking French to me because I don't know what you just said, but. Okay,
that's okay. I don't expect you to follow tennis. I expect you to write for Trojan's Wire, so that's fine.
Well, right. Matt, if you would have said Coco Crisp, I would have been right there with you. But
Cleveland baseball, yes, that's what you know about.
Red Sox, yes, absolutely. So, folks, once again, all the content deliveries that we mentioned earlier, we will detail those more. Plus, we will send out a poll. I will do it as soon as we get off the air to get your suggestions on what type of content you would like to see this summer. But in the meantime, of course, Trojan's Wire with Matt and with Tim, Friday night with Matt and Tim at 7 Pacific time. Get your call-in questions ready and lock it in here at the Voice of College Football. And we will see you on Friday, folks.